All right, good morning, everybody. It's another Wednesday, August 20th. So that means it's another time for Water Cooler Wednesday, as we like to call it, where I go over new case studies. Sometimes we revisit some old case studies to show you how those have progressed through the years. So it's a little mix of everything, and I appreciate you listening and sharing this with other people to check out. Do appreciate that. Joined by Dwayne Gibbs. Dwayne, what's happening,
Good
bud?
morning, bud. How's it going?
Oh, doing good, busy.
Oh,
You can imagine, but
busy.
all
Busy
good.
is good.
Yep, all good. So I've got a little technique here that started teaching many years ago, and it's something very, very relevant to today. In fact, I had a conversation yesterday with the client who's purchased several notes. He's been probably a client of mine for 3, 4 years maybe, and purchased notes doing the regular business, and now wants to do a little lending. And there is a difference with private lending and buying traditional notes. First of all, everybody, yes, they are very, very related because they're both in the paper business, but there are differences on how you approach those. Couple things from the top. If you're doing private lending, again, it might be very short term, 6 month type loans. It might be bridge loans that are 2 years or longer. And you have to look at your risk differently than buying a seasoned note. Especially if it's a new client that you're lending money to for the first time. You're just in a riskier position. You're in a more active position. It's a fine way to make money. You just have to make sure you know what the heck you're doing, or you're not going to be around a long time. You can get into these things too much. So it does come down to, what's your loan to value ratio when you're lending on that side. That's something we call investment to value ratio on the note side there. But they both, the whole thing is how much money do you have in it as it relates to the underlying collateral. And though that's a big difference, between the two. People who are looking for more passive income will find more opportunities in a more comfortable space in the note investing side, where you're buying notes that have seasoning, that have a track record, something you can fall back on and say, well, gee, the property value is way up here. They only owe this. They've been in the house for 10 years. They've been making payments on time. So you have a lot more to look at because of the longevity versus a short-term loan where you're going into the unknown. Is this person going to pay? Are they not going to pay? If I have to take the property back, am I prepared to either sell that property, liquidate it, or am I prepared to take that property back, put more money into it myself, fix up the renovations and those sorts of things? And a little scarier today because of the renovation costs. Renovation costs are going up. Things are a little bit more expensive. And time's a little bit more expensive to get the work done. So again, you got to make sure that you're being careful on that side. Dwayne, I can't remember if you did private lending or not in the past.
I never did any private lending, but I did a lot of rehab fix up and the cost difference as you say now is um way different than it used to be. I've
Yeah.
lent a lot of money, just never got it back from people. Oh man, I'll pay you back, and so I do not recommend lending to friends and family.
Yeah, those are unsecured notes. Yeah.
Don't want to do that.
Yeah, secured notes. All right, at least we got the
Yeah,
property there. But I
live and
did a
learn. I, I
ton of
bought I
rehab, and I
bought I
did.
bought a lot of experience on that.
Yeah, I did a ton of renovations. So I was on the borrowing side of short-term hard money loans, and that's kind of how I learned the business of lending, especially through trust and such. But they are different. There's some, what seems like subtle, but again can be very big differences between the two. But ultimately, what you want to do is, if you're lending, you do want to create a note that has value on a resale market. It just makes sense because you can, as a lender, whether it's your own money or whether you have put together a syndication of some sort, private placement, whatever that might be, and you have other investors' capital in something, things come up. And it's nice to have that exit of, well, great, I'm being paid on the loan, or But I can't wait 2 years to collect. I need to cash out now to satisfy this investor or do whatever you might need to do. It's nice to have another exit strategy, which is I built a good sellable note here.
Mm,
And the dynamics change a little bit because when you're doing a short-term higher risk loan on a rehab property and you're basing things on after repaired value, so there's a lot of speculation in your numbers. um, you're taking on more risk, so typically the interest rate is going to be high. It is going to be 12%, possibly more, depending upon the state. So when we buy, when you think you're creating a note at 12%, you go, oh, I could just resell it easily because it's already at 12%. I'm not going to take much of a discount, if anything, when I create this note. That's not true, because it's not all about yield. It's also about the risk. And we've said this over and over again.
yeah.
Um, but again, so what I'm saying is this: if you've got a property with $100,000 after repaired value, and the person's buying it for $70,000, okay, if you're lending them the 70 grand plus the, let's say, $20,000 to renovate it, you're in it for 90,000 after repair, 100, maybe over 100,000, maybe 110,000. Guess what? If they don't get the renovation done, if they just look at their expenses and go, wait a minute, why am I doing this? I borrowed $90,000, which I'm paying on. By the time I get the rehab done, I'm going to be in this thing and pay off the loan. I'm going to only make 10 grand or less. Why am I going to continue to do this? And that's what's happening to some lenders right now, is they're stuck because property values are starting to taper off a little bit. So you don't have that acceleration and growth anymore. So if you figure that property value is essentially level in the time that this short-term loan in 1 year, I mean, how much can it really go up? But your renovation cost has gone up. You've got a lot of these investors who invest with LLCs, and sure, maybe they give a personal guarantee, but you know what? At the end of the day, you're going to foreclose on their LLC, or they'll just sign it over to you because you don't want to go through the expense and everything else of
I got the
foreclosure. They're just
property.
going to, hey, I'll sign it over to you. You can take it over, walk away. It's never going to hurt their credit because they borrowed it through the LLC and all those sorts of things. So there's not a big penalty to pay for them to walk away, other than burning the bridge for you as a lender. But who knows how long you're going to be doing deals like that. So you're stuck. So yeah, you might have that note and go, well, I could turn around and sell that thing, that $90,000 note, because it's at 12%. No, no, no. If the property is still currently worth 70, maybe $75,000 because the work hasn't been done on the thing, we're using that number as the current value, and that's where a lot of investors get stuck. On loans that are already on working, or properties that need light rehab, let's call it, or they're already set up with tenants in it, like a loaded rental or something like that, you get more into the bridge loans, which are longer term loans. And there's generally more scrutiny on that type of a loan as to who the borrower is, versus a short, quick rehab loan. Uh, so on the bridge loans, because there's going to be more time, 3 years, possibly, sometimes even up to 5 years on these bridge loans, there's more time for them to let the note mature a little bit, give it 6 months of seasoning or 3 months at a minimum, and then be able to sell that note. They're going to come off much better because, again, a note investor is looking for that more seasoned product and more passive return on this and want to see a track record. And on a property like that, that's already at the after repaired value, because it didn't need much in the form of repair. If anything, it was almost ready to go. Carpet, paint, that sort of stuff. That's no big deal. It's done in a short period of time to get the thing rented. Fantastic. That's a different type of loan set there. It's a less aggressive, less risky. But those note creators, lenders, they run into the same problem, which is that investment to value ratio, because they're in it again for 80, 90% of what the property's worth. And yes, you can make the argument all day long. Yeah, but it's renting for $1,500 a month and the payment's 500. I don't care. It's like, as a note investor, I don't care. Good. They're going to be able to make the payment, or they should, But at the end of the day, I still want to make sure that I'm protected on my risk factor if I have to take this thing back. I have expenses for foreclosure and everything else. And just because the property's in decent condition now doesn't mean at the end of the foreclosure, which might take me 18 months, doesn't mean the property's going to be in the same condition. We've seen some of those too, right?
Yes,
Some of the
for sure.
condition people can leave property in is uh, it's frightening. Yeah, sometimes. I mean, to see how some people live, or they just get pissed off because they're either being evicted or being foreclosed upon, and they just don't care anymore. So you got to be really careful on that stuff. So there's a technique of doing something that creates a sellable note and alleviates that investment to value problem if you go to resell a note. So again, what I mean by that is if you're doing a longer term bridge loan, let's say a 5-year loan on something, and a couple of months or years down the road, you want to sell that note, you still could potentially run into, well, they're making offers based on investment to value ratio, not just yield, and therefore I have to take too big of a discount.
Mm,
Okay. So the answer is what I call a two-note solution. And I talk about it in my book. Um, the book came out much later than we were teaching it in real practice, but that's the case study I want to show you today. So, what is the two-note solution technique here? Okay, real deal. Now, these property values are going to look a little bit different. This is one of the first deals that somebody applied this technique. But the principles, again, it's all the same today. So this is one of the origins of this, and it's a great case study here. So this property had a BPO, broker's price opinion, of 50 grand. This is in the middle America, Midwest, Ohio or Indiana. I don't even have it on there because it's not really that relevant, but it's one of those Midwest states. So again, I know people from all over the country watch these videos, and I know if this is in California, it's not going to be. I get it. That's why we don't invest there. We go to where the deals are. There are still houses like this in Ohio, in Indiana, and Michigan that are now worth $100,000. And it's the same thing. So this one at the time, $50,000. And this was a non-performing loan that was purchased for $16,000. Okay, so again, if you need to add a zero to these numbers to make you feel better, fine. Just think about the principle here, because I would think anybody would say, if I got a house that legitimately has a broker's price opinion, somebody who's been out to the property, at least out on the outside of it, they've run it through multiple listing service, they have comparable sales, and they say, yeah, it's worth 50 grand, and you're able to purchase that non-performing note for $16,000, is that a good deal?
hmm
You know what I mean? It's like, okay.
That's a no-brainer, huh?
And it's like when you're the note investor on this non-performing note, again, we think in terms of investment to value, or ITV. So you're in it for 32%. Where did 32% come from? The simple math: $16,000 divided by 50 is 32%. So you have a very low risk investment here. Now, you have a non-performing note that comes with it a story, because behind every non-performing note is someone who's not paying, or doesn't have the current ability to pay, or is discouraged from paying, but now does have the ability to pay again. Okay. Sometimes we have insight to that, numbers and story. We've seen hardship letters and that sort of thing. This one was actually a young man who had lost his job. So he had the inability to make payments. And as most younger borrowers, well, shouldn't even say that, as a lot of borrowers do when they have the inability to pay, is they just try to fade into the bushes, right? They just try to not answer the phone, don't answer the door, don't read the mail, because they know what's coming. They know that people are looking to collect on that debt. And of course, that's the worst thing they can do, but that happens. right? And Dwayne, you've had that happen to you on non-performing notes.
Yeah,
And I know
yeah,
you,
for sure.
yeah, you had to go out there and knock on a door one time and
Yeah,
you know,
that's something that you don't do. It just
that's a
happened to be
rarity.
the
Yeah.
circumstances, you know.
So great. So step one, these note investors who I trained, they bought this non-performing note for $16,000. Good. Part one, they made a good buy. They're going to make money on this thing no matter what happens. So the first thing they tried to do was help this young man stay in the home. I think I skipped a slide there. No?
No.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's one in there. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
they tried to help this young man stay in his home. So the first thing they went to was a loan mod because again, nobody gets in this industry to foreclose on people. You know, it just you'd rather get this note working again. This guy probably owed close to $50,000 on this property because remember, property values, you know, it had gone down in the crash and that sort of thing. So he probably still owed 50 grand. So of course, wouldn't you want to have a reperforming note that you paid $16,000 to with a $50,000 balance and you're getting cash flow every month? Yeah. So that's what they tried to do. The problem was it simply wasn't working out. The young guy had abandoned the house, moved in with his parents, and was kind of in a depression. You know, he wasn't able to find work, and so he just did nothing. So they contacted through the mail. They contacted this person because I guess at some point the mail had been forwarded to his parents' house. So he got the mail, or the parents opened the mail, or whatever it was. They got the letter, you know, laying out kind of what the consequences are of losing the house and going and having a foreclosure versus or just sign the house over and we'll forgive all the debt. It's called a deed in lieu, DIL, deed in lieu of foreclosure, which in scenarios like this, best thing that could happen. 100%. Sign the property over, walk away. You're over and done with it as a delinquent borrower. The note investor's happy because they are out of the deal as well. I don't know what that is. Oh, there we go. It's just a better, quicker solution for everybody. So this young man did that. He just signed it over and that was that. So now they ended up with this property. So now they have this $50,000 property that they paid $16,000 for and some servicing costs to send out letters. So they're essentially in it for 16 grand. Well, obviously they had already pre-thought out because it's the way train people they've already pre-thought out exit strategies and not just one, but at least three, right? We always talk in
Sure.
terms of have three workout strategies here. So again, they could sell the house for cash as is. They could sell it with financing. The house was left in great shape, by the way. In fact, they were even cutting the lawn. That's why it still looked like it was occupied because it just they were who cuts the lawn when they're not paying their bills, and the family did because the parents actually did not live that far away and they just felt, hey, we're not just going to let the house overgrow and all that, leave it in good shape, which they did. So this was a dust up kind of a turnkey property. So they said, well, why don't we do this, why don't we rent it to somebody and then eventually convert that tenant into an owner.
Hmm.
And that's another technique that we do. So what they're doing is they're swinging from one technique, the buying with a non-performing note, getting a deed in lieu, to now the next strategy, which is how can we maximize our profit and lower our risk? So they did renovate. You can see it looks a little bit different, some fresh paint on there, fix up the landscaping a little bit, put some nice mulch down, just make it look nice. It was nice in the inside. The people left it very, very well. Lease option is what they chose to do, which was smart. So they're getting rent, which is higher most of the time than a mortgage payment would be. They're letting a person build towards a down payment through the non-refundable option money, and they're getting the benefit of seeing how this renter at this point can perform. Are they able to make their payments on a timely basis? Because if we're going to allow them to exercise the option to finance it, we now know that they have a good record of paying the rent. Okay, and you can see that the 53-1, what's this going to be the sales price after the lease option was done. Okay, so fast forwarding, the person paid on time, everything else, and she wanted to exercise the option, and now property values were starting to recover. So she goes, "Yep, I want to own the house." And by the way, when you rent under a lease option, it's a different type of tenant, right? Because
100%.
it's all up here. The mentality is they're
Wow.
not just living in a house and they're going to be out of there in a year. They're living in a house that they are ultimately going to own, which naturally means they're going to take better care of it. They're going to fix things up without asking you. They're going to kind of personalize it a little bit. All positive stuff there. So this is how they papered out of the deal, meaning, okay, now we're going to convert her from a tenant, make her become or allow her to become a homeowner. But as I was saying in the build up to this, they wanted to create good quality notes, okay, that they could cash out on, a good quality note that they could cash out on. Now, the problem here is if they were to create a single note, okay, for argument's sake, for illustrative states here, let's say that they applied option money of $3,100, so 50,000 is the amount that they're going to create the note for. Okay, just so we can do the easy math. So 53.1 is her purchase price, but they're crediting in her for 3,100 for the option
Applying that
money.
money. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there's 50,000, and that's what they're going to finance. If they created that one note and then turned around and wanted to sell that note, which they could probably do without much seasoning now because they do have somebody who's been in the property for a year that's showed the ability to make payments.
Hmm.
The $50,000 note that they create, if they did it at 12% interest, okay, even a high interest rate like that, thinking that a note investor will buy this, maybe even at par because it's already at 12%, the problem becomes the house in 1 year is still worth relatively around 50,000 bucks.
Hmm.
Okay, maybe a 55,000 if it goes up, whatever. It's not worth much more than 50 grand. So a note investor is going to look at that and go, well, $50,000 property, I don't want to be in it for more than 70%. So the note's worth 35 grand to me. Now the yield will take care of itself. Obviously, if I bought that $50,000 note at 12%, if I bought that for 35 grand, my return is going to be much, much, much higher than 12%. I didn't
Sure.
even have to think about that. I'm thinking about the risk. Okay. So that's problematic, because they're taking too big of a discount. And that's where an unprepared real estate investor who wants to sell with financing, which is a smart thing to do today, that's a growing area of this industry. If you're going to get into that, don't go in unprepared because you're going to create garbage notes and you're going to get garbage prices. We've just seen that over and over again. So how do they work this out? Well, the solution here I told them was do a two-note solution. Create a first mortgage, then create a second mortgage. Okay. So now they've got two loans that add up to the 53,100. Okay. So they've got two notes. How are they going to work this? Well, let's lay it out this way. So you got a first position note, 35,940 at 7.5, 185 months. You've got a second position note here, 17,000 at 8.5% for 185 months at 166. Now, the total payments on that is $500 a month. Guess what she's been paying for rent for the last year? About $500 a month. So we know she can afford the payment, right? So you kind of reverse engineer,
Bingo.
right? You kind of backed into it like, well, we know she can afford this. How can we create notes and make money on it? Okay, so fun with math here. So on these two notes, from the whole conception of building these notes, the idea is I'm going to sell this one in first position and we're going to keep this one in second position. Okay. When does the second note, the note in second position, start making payments? Well, right away. There's no delay on that. So on that note that they're keeping, they're getting monthly cash flow the month after they create the notes, right? So they're getting $166.73 a month on that. Now they have this first position note. This first position note now is really going to only be discounted on yield. Why? Because they covered their butts on the investment to value ratio. The investment to value ratio is already at about 70%. So now the mentality of a smart note investor goes, okay, I can check my box of safety on the ITV. Now let me look at discount and yield. So I would only have to discount this a little bit to bump that 7.5 to maybe 10, 11%. Okay, something like that. All right. So they've created a good quality first position note that they can sell. And instead of throwing away the other money in the discount, they monetized it by creating a second. That's all they did here, right? That's what a two note solution is all about. Now, because they've come to my training multiple times, they ended up taking this is what I told them to do. They ended up thinking about it and took it a step further based on trainings that they had been to with me and Dwayne. What do you think they did on that first position note, Dwayne? Because I don't know. You've never seen this case study, I don't think.
I would probably say they sold that off.
How?
Uh,
Took it a step further. That's what I told them to do. Just sell that note off. You'll get the
did they
whole.
sell a partial?
There you
How
go.
about that? Winner, winner.
Yeah, of course, because they were thinking, yeah, we could sell that whole note, and maybe get 30 grand, 32 grand, 33, whatever the numbers are. But you know what? We don't need that much money out of the deal. Because remember, everybody, they started with $16,000 in the deal. So they started thinking about that. They're going, I don't know if we want to cash out that much. Why don't we apply yet another technique? Okay, so they're just going from one technique to another. We're going to sell that note, but instead of selling all of the note, we're just going to sell enough so we can get 23,500 bucks out of it.
That's smart.
Right? So basically, get their 16 grand back plus, right? Almost double out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Smart, right? So what did they do? They backed once again into the math. Now, again, if you learn from me and you've seen other videos I've done on YouTube or anything like that where you've seen me use a financial calculator, it's just backing into these deals and knowing how to work the numbers. Remember, it's always numbers and story here. So they calculated that they could sell 107 payments to another investor for 9.65% for 23,000 for $23,500. They could sell 107 payments of 333.17 per month to another investor. That investor would get 9.65% return.
It's a good investment.
Mm-hmm. And they had an investor who was not a trained note investor, but was somebody who was looking for a better than average return. 9.65 was extremely attractive. Okay. I mean, someone who has has rental properties was making less than that. So this guy said, yeah, so I don't have to deal with tenants. I can make 9.65 like a landlord without being a landlord for the next 107 months. And my yield's going to be 9.65. They don't call me for this, that, and the other. Okay. So that's what they did. So extremely smart because that really does a couple of different things on maximizing their return. So let me lay it out a different way once again. So we've got two notes and think in terms of linear, right? You got 107 payments that they're selling here out of the total of 188 payments. So the line across there was the 188 payments for the first position note and the second position note. It was 185, sorry, 185 payments on the second position, 185 on the first position. They're going to keep all 185 payments on the second position note. Okay, so they're getting paid every month 166.73, and they know she has the ability to pay. After 2 months, so they got the first 2 months of payments. right? They created the paper, they got a couple of months, they talked to the investor, investor says, I'm in for the next 107 payments. But remember, after that investor gets paid back that number of payments, there's still 76 remaining on the back end of that note. Okay, so they're getting all of those 76 payments at the back end of the note. And of course, they're keeping all of this 185 in here as well. So when you start to look at the math on this thing, looking at all of those payments, accounts receivables that are coming in, the first two payments, the final end of the 76, the 185 payments, that's $49,474 that they're getting paid back on this thing, plus all of the rent that they got for the first year and the option money that was included in that deal. Started with a $16,000 investment.
That's great. That's a good deal. I mean, that's a good deal.
It it can seem a little complex, but everybody think about this. It wasn't any one of you could have done this if you knew where to find the right opportunity, if you knew how to buy a non-performing note at this price. That's all they did. Step one. Step two, let's try to do a workout with this person. Not going to happen. He signed the property over. Great. Now we have the property. Let's put a little lipstick and rouge on it, make it look nice. Let's do a lease option on this thing to somebody who really wants to own a home, but we're not ready to, they don't have the down payment or something like that. Let's get them in there, get them making payments, right? Then let's think in terms of mathematically, what can she afford living in the house to become an owner? About $500 a month. All right. How do we structure two notes to make that work out? We massage the math. We start looking for a buyer of this note. They could have sold the whole note, as we said, but they decided, you know what? We don't need all that money, right now. All we need is about 23.5. We don't want the whole thing. So we'll just keep the back end of the note. Why not? Just take out what you need. Sold it to another investor. That other investor was happy because this borrower paid like clockwork. And when you see the returns that they got at the end of the day, it just they made much more money on this than they could have by just taking this property back and selling it. So just a smart way to do it. So it's I love these ones that just combine different techniques, that I teach.
I
So
would say that, I'm sure somebody listening would probably say, well, could they have done a partial on the second? And they could have.
yeah, they could have sold the second in total. They could have done a partial on that. Partials on seconds though are a
It's
little
not,
more
that's what I was getting ready to say.
tricky, but
Yeah.
it's possible.
But
But
why
that
would
was
you
such a
really want to
small, it
do
was such a
that? I
small
mean,
one in that one
yeah.
too, though. $166 a month was a little lean for that. But yeah, it could be done. And again, it's just understanding what these assets really represent. And that's what we do. And we still have our video series, by the way, available to you, learn.kevinshortell.com. And it's a good video series. I chopped it into 4 parts because it's pretty long, and it's a couple hours at least, and just going through real deals and showing you the mindset of how I look at these things. What As I start to go through, what information am I gathering? What's important so I can look it up later? Because these things are, these deals get exposed, more than anything, versus you just have all the facts up front. Um, for example, I think, Dwayne, didn't I talk about the deal with the property taxes? What was that one? That one,
Yeah, that was last week.
was that this
I
one?
thought we talked about that last week.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got an update on that one. No, it's not that one. Just what I mean, everybody, they come in layers. The deal I talked about last week It had a property tax issue from the modification, which the guy
Sure.
fixed, right? So he said,
Right.
"Yeah, my bad,
Mhm.
fixed it."
Yep.
Got the title report back on that deal. Okay, so I found public records. I did all that. I found the problem with the taxes. Got a title report. Title report comes back. There's $7,714 worth of utility liens on it.
On top of it.
Yeah. So that's
Crazy.
my next level of discovery. That's what I mean. All the
But
information doesn't come in at once. If I would have stopped and said, "Well, I got it all figured out," I would have missed $7,700 in utility liens. And in that state, those jump to the front of the line. So that directly hurts any kind of payoff, that sort of thing that I would get on that property if I had to go back and resell it. So, learning this in the video series goes through that thought process of not only looking at the deal now, but thinking about protecting myself in the future. Is it papered up the right way? If I do have to go to court, am I going to be okay? Can I show proof of it? So it's a really good video series.
plus it's free.
Yeah,
How do you go wrong? It's
and
free.
it's free, and of
Great
course,
information.
yeah, and of course, you also can talk with us, and if this is something of interest, and you really want to learn this business the right way, it's something I've been doing a long time, and I know I can show you the right way to do it as well. All these things, there's a reason why somebody like myself has been around a long time. Um, you know,
No
I'm,
question.
yeah. So you can contact us through this as well. You can shoot an email to info at kevinshortell.com, info at kevinshortell.com, and Dwayne will give you a call, an email, follow up with you, and let's talk and see what works. Dwayne, you got any final
No, I would say, if you're looking for good information if you've never been exposed to the note business and what all Kevin's teaching you, on these on Water Cooler Wednesday, and you have some questions, go to learn.kevinshortell.com. Get that 4 series video, because that really breaks down of how he trains, number one, and number two, gives you a better idea of what all that looks like, of how to analyze a deal, how to break it down, what are the steps to give you a better understanding of the business. And like you said, if you have questions, info at kevinshortell.com, and I will reach out to you and we can break down your questions and give you a better understanding of what you don't know about the market versus what Kevin can help you with.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So we'll see you again next Wednesday, and if not sooner. And don't forget, you can also check out my YouTube channel, Tip of the Day, on social media, and please like and follow on all of those. I do appreciate it. And I'll be doing a summit coming up for free. So look on my social media as well for that. In fact, Dwayne's doing a part of that summit also, and it should be good. There's about 20 so instructors, maybe 22 or so instructors. It's going to be, again, another free online event over a series of days. And you'll see information coming out about that as well. So thanks again, everybody. Look forward to talking to you again real soon.